The building of an underwater habitat in Planet Zoo is probably one of the most difficult creations that you can achieve. But in this video, I'm going to show you step by step how I go about creating one. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be confident enough to build your own. If you already know how to build one, hopefully this step by step tutorial will give you inspiration of how to make these kind of habitats even better. Now, the fundamentals of creating an underwater habitat with that underwater viewing for your guests in Planet Zoo is quite simple. We basically need to trap water between land and the habitat glass barrier. So let me show you how to trap that water, get the fundamentals right, and then you can increase the aesthetics and how the habitat actually looks. Now you need to go on barriers, and you can choose any glass barrier basically. You can use the normal glass, the one-way glass, or the thick glass. Doesn't make a difference what type of glass you use. And I'm just going to place a glass down. Like I said, design-wise this is totally up to you, but let's just learn the fundamentals before we start jumping in and making everything look brilliant, yeah? Right. I'm going to put angle snap in, and I'm going to come in 2. I'm going to come in 2 again and place it. I'm going to come in 2 again and place that. I'm going to right click so I can work on the other side. And I'm just going to do exactly the same as I did on that side. Just coming in 2, just like this. By the way, I have got the glass barriers on 6 meters long. It doesn't matter about height. Once you've done the actual barriers, then you can click on this button here. Now this selects all your barriers, then you can increase the height. Bang the height snap on 1 meters on the bottom right here, and then just go up. I think 6 meters is probably a nice height to work on for an underwater viewing area for guests. Right, go on your terrain, and this is where most people struggle with now. What you want to do is use the terrain stamp. You don't have to, I just find it easier. Now you want to bury this terrain into this barrier and vice versa. You need to make sure that your terrain is higher than your barrier. But it can be quite deceiving this, because you can see the height is currently on 11 meters, but my barrier was only on 6 meters, but my barrier is higher than the terrain. Yeah, exactly. Just increase the height of this until it's over the top of your barrier. Play about with your angles of your camera, like you see me doing here, so it buries that in. Get it so where it's red. This red means it's interacting with each other, this color here. The barrier is basically interacting with the terrain. And just place the terrain down and do the same on the other side, and then join them just like that. Now you see it's dug down here, so we need to now dig this barrier further into this terrain. So go back on your barriers, click on your barriers here, and make sure this far right option's on, flat top and edible bottom. Make sure that's on, and then just place it one more time into your terrain and do the same on the other side. This will give you the ability to now place the water inside, trapping it between the terrain and the barrier. So go on your terrain, go on water, and as you can see, we can now place it in. And that's the basics of building around an underwater viewing area. You need to be able to trap that water in. For paths, you then go ahead and you just get your paths as close as physical possible just before it turns red to the actual barrier. But it'll look stupid, won't it? You'll have a stupid gap. Now there's things you can do. You can try to get it as close as possible to this barrier, like you can see me doing here, and then you can cover this gap with foliage. That's one option. That's the easy option. But you can also create custom paths. If I just search plaster, and then we go off the grid, make sure it's an off the grid piece, we can line it up with our barriers, with our glass barriers, lower it down just above the path, and then line it up, and then we can create our custom path. If you do that all around the outside of this barrier, and then you change these paths into null path, so just scroll down and go to a natural path, you can see your guests will still walk over this. You've not got the paths, the in-game path showing anywhere, but you will create your own custom path around the outside of this barrier. Now there's obviously a few questions still to be answered here. How do the animals actually get into a habitat like this? Where would you put the habitat gate? And secondly, how will they traverse into the water? Because that's quite a steep drop. Now, first of all, for your animals to actually get in the water, there's a couple of ways how to do this. Now, you can remove the water. Now, this gets a bit difficult, and it might not let you put it back in. Hopefully, it will let us put it back in. So let's remove that water. Now you can start creating that slope. Now there's a couple of ways how to do this. You can go on your sculpting and you can just smooth this area down basically, and then you can add the water back in and it creates a little bit of a more slope, but not exactly to the water yet. So I'll delete the water once again. And we're going to go on sculpting, and we just want to sculpt this so it does give access for our animals to get to the terrain, to the water. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go on push, and I'm just going to push this down like this. We're going to go on smooth and just smooth that out. And then we're going to go and add the water in once again. You can see that that has now created quite a natural slope into the water for our animals to access it. Now, before we start building a more elaborate, better looking habitat than we currently have got, let me show you how to answer the other question. How do the animals actually get in here? Where would you put the barriers and where would you add the habitat gates? The basics of it is you need to get this level of terrain back down to ground level. There is no other way. You can do this with plaster pieces, traversable wooden pieces, whatever it may be. You need to get this level back down to ground level, and that's the same with this. I needed, when I showed you how to get this slope in, I needed to get this slope to this level of water. By the way, if you don't want to create a natural slope, you can go into your like plaster pieces like I've just mentioned, and you can just create a slope. Basically, you can create a natural slope going into the actual water. So you can put it ground level like this, pretend that slope's not there, for example, and you can just start creating a ramp like structure like this, and your animals will traverse over it and down onto the ramp into the water. Now we can do that the same to get down to ground level on the other side of it. Your terrain at the top is going to be a larger area, so let's actually just increase this area. Remember, we're not trying to make it look good at the moment. I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. Let me show you the fundamentals first. Right, we need to get down to ground level. Now we can do what we did when we did the water slope, and we can create a slope. We can just keep pushing and pulling the actual back of this here to create that slope, just like that. Hopefully that's not too steep, but you're getting the point. You can create a slope by manipulating the terrain like you can see me doing here, to create a natural slope onto the high bit of the terrain for the animals. And then you can carry on your habitat barriers. So let's go into barriers, and then it doesn't matter what barriers you use. You can even go on null barriers at this point, because your animals will not be able to get out, especially if you build up here with construction pieces. But like I said, I'll show you how to make it pretty in a minute. You can then just go around, and then if you want it just plain and simple, you can put that into mesh like this. You could put this one into mesh, and you can carry on that mesh here. Then it's just about adding your actual habitat gates. Remember, it's got to be on ground level like so, and then you'll just finish that off. You'll come back around and you'll join it back on to that glass barrier on this side like I did here with this side. You join it and you will have a complete habitat. You can go then ahead if you want to have your habitat look like this for some reason, but you still got an underwater viewing area, remember, and just put whatever animal you want in here. The whole idea of it is making this whole environment from somewhere where the animals cannot get to a traversable area for the animals to be able to get to, and for your zookeepers to be able to get to. If your zookeepers can't get up here for whatever reason because it's too steep, but your animals can, they won't be able to clean this area, will they? So you need to make it traversable for your zookeepers, your vets, and your animals, and that's the whole premise of it. That's the difficult part done. That's the fundamentals and the difficult parts of creating an underwater viewing area done. Let me show you ways of how to make it look better now. You can see here I have created a large area for our water. We've created a ramp going up for the terrain, and I've covered the terrain. I'll just delete to show you. I've covered the actual terrain in plaster pieces just to cover it up and make it look better. That ramp is going in for our animals into the water, and you can see I have also laid a floor down. Now we've got the same floor on the inside of the bottom of our water tank as the outs, but don't worry about that because we can cover the inside of this with foliage and rocks to make it look different to the outside pathing area. Do not worry about jagged terrain edges at the moment coming out. We're going to cover that with foliage or plant work or planters, whatever you want to cover that with basically. And don't worry about your construction pieces coming out over your terrain. Your animals will still traverse over wherever you put your construction pieces. Remember, we've got a ramp here, and we're going to build a ramp on this side coming down to ground level. And I'm going to do that now, actually. So I'm just going to build one out here. I'm going to build this out here with it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the off the grid plaster pieces. We'll put a position snap on so it just snaps to that position, and then we'll turn this at an angle like this, and then we'll come down and we'll make it all flush and level. I'm going to come off that grid in case I have to adjust it and move it, and I'm just going to place that ramp. Again, you don't have to use the plaster pieces, just what I like using. We can go ahead and get the flooring in as well while we're here with these plaster pieces from the top that we did. And this is going to be the ground level of the habitat for whatever subaquatic animal you end up putting in here. I think that'll be big enough. If you see terrain poking out like that, go on your flattened terrain and just flatten that down. I think I'm going to put the habitat barrier in here. So let's do that now. Let's go on to habitat gate. We're going to align it ever so carefully with the construction pieces. We'll turn that path to null, and then we'll turn these barriers, edit barriers. We'll turn this to null like that. And then we'll just join up our null barriers with our glass barriers like such. And then we'll do again on the other side. You can be as messy as one with null barriers. They're null, aren't they? So we're going to come round, and then we're going to join it on to the glass barrier there. Now if we click on this, we have got a full habitat, and we are able to now put animals in. Obviously we've got to build this construction around it first, so let's do that. Again, design is totally up to you. I'm just going with a very simple design for this, just to show you for demonstration purposes. Like so. And then we'll cover this with the off the grid plaster pieces. Line it all up like this. Make it look as neat as we possibly can do. Like so, there's our habitat gate. And then we just need to build this area out now. Once it's been built out like this, you can then go and put a roof on it. Now, I've done many roof tips and tutorial videos, so if you're unsure of how you want your roof to look, then go and take a gander at my other tutorial videos, and you'll probably find a decent style roof that you want. I'm just going to put a flat roof on here like this, and what I like to do is overhang it a little bit, and I actually am going to recolor it as well. Let's do like a dark grey, and then we're just going to fill all this in basically. I'm actually going to put a little skylight in here, just feels like it would go really, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a little skylight in here like such. Just to add a little bit more brightness to the inside of the actual hard shelter. So now you've pretty much got a functional underwater viewing area habitat here, haven't you? I like to change the water, especially if I'm working in a tropical climate. So let's select that, and we're going to go on tropical. I'm going to turn it down to 1.2, just seems like the magic number for me. And then all that left to do is just to spruce everything up. We've got this jagged edge, like I said. Easy, very easy way to fix something like this is go onto your construction pieces once again, and you can actually build a planter. You can go on plaster. I just love the plaster pieces. I use them so much. They're so versatile because there is the off the grid ones like you see in here as well. And then there's the smaller ones what you can get. Let's go with the bigger one though, and you can just line this up like this, build it out a little bit, turn that round. Now if I keep lining this up like so, and just cover the jagged edges what you're seeing, let me just actually make sure it lines up properly. There we go. And then yeah, just cover around, build around those terrain edges what I've popped out because we don't want to see them. You can then go ahead and go into your nature tab and you can build a planter to cover that. So let's type in mulch, get some mulch going on and cover that. Put some trees in that or some flowers and you've covered that. Do the same on the other side to make it look symmetrical. I always try to make things look symmetrical as possible. And Bob's your uncle, fan as you aren't, you've covered the jagged edges. You've got a functional actual habitat. You can go ahead and throw your animals in here now. But let me give you some tips and tricks of how to spruce this up and make things look a hell of a lot better. And to give you an example of how things can end up looking, I have brought you to my underwater viewing habitat in Nootropic Zoo, a zoo that I have created. You can see that I have included an animal talk zone on the underwater viewing part. If I go ahead and just start deleting pieces, you'll be able to see how I've made pieces. If I delete this plaster piece here, you can see why I've put it there. I've covered the actual in-game barrier post. On the inside, I've used a lot of the aquatic 4 rocks out the aquatic pack and some of the underwater plantage, which you can see more clearly here, the foliage mixing in with the 4 rocks. Talking about sprucing things up, this is how I've gone about sprucing the actual building up. You can see I've added the planters all around the edge. Remember, that's covering the nasty bits, what we don't want people to see. And even on the edge here, just making things a hell of a lot better by throwing a load of foliage and a load of rock work in there. I actually ended up extending this habitat and putting a larger backstage area here, but the fundamentals what I've just showed you still stand. I've just used my own custom walls that I've created. On the other side, I've done something a little bit different and put the all-important foliage in to cover up all the nasty bits on this side. And this is actually a habitat for the pygmy hippos, which you can currently see traversing down our ramp. They can then traverse down this ramp into the underwater viewing area for guests. Right, so let's have a little recap with this habitat in mind then. What did we do? We went ahead and added the actual habitat barriers which are going to lead in the terrain to trap the water. Add the actual water. Then add the ramps what go from the heightened terrain to the lower base level what you get in the game standard. Go ahead and add the ramp from the upper level of the terrain down into the water so your animals can traverse into the water, and then spruce things up by hiding that terrain. Build an actual building to create a hard shelter for your animal, and then go ahead and add your custom paths. In this instance, for this example, it's decking, so you don't have to worry about the in-game paths and how they look, and then go and spruce the inside of the habitat up by using foliage and rock work. Go ahead and open the habitat up to your guest and you have now got a fully functional underwater viewing habitat. With that being said, I'm going to leave you with a wonderful view of Nootropic Zoo. Any more questions, anything you struggle with, hit me up in the comment section below this video. If this video did help you in any way, or if not, even just inspire you to create an underwater viewing area, then please hit that like button. And for more Planet Zoo tutorials like this, if you're not already, hit that subscribe button. My name's Adam. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will catch you in the next Planet Zoo video.